Hello, Rams fans! This week flew by in the blink of an eye, and the month of May is practically coming to an end. A lot is still ahead. OTAs, mini-camps, and before we know it, we'll be in Week 1 of the 2026 season. Today, we need to talk about a player almost nobody is talking about, and how he could help the Rams go beyond the playoffs. I'm about to tell you everything. But first, make sure you've already hit that like button. But only do it if you believe Ty Simpson is an excellent player. If possible, comment this: Go Rams! Let's go all in. Now, pay close attention, because when people talk about hidden weapons and underrated players, there are usually reasons for it. Sometimes it's because a player doesn't put up eye-popping numbers. Sometimes it happens because someone else steals the spotlight. But in this case, the discussion around Cam Kinchens goes far beyond that. The word being used to describe him is versatility, and not just ordinary versatility. We're talking about the kind of versatility that changes the way a defense operates. Cam Kinchens came in with questions surrounding his athletic testing and measurable traits. Reports highlighted performances at a level that didn't necessarily match traditional testing expectations. While many players are judged mainly by workout and drill numbers, Kinchens seems to represent a completely different conversation. Game speed versus timed speed. And that distinction matters. Because football games are not won with stopwatches. Football games are won with instincts, positioning, awareness, anticipation, and execution. The information surrounding Kinchens points toward a player who simply knows where to be. A player who understands situations. A player whose impact starts appearing once the ball is snapped. Before joining the Rams, Kinchens built an impressive resume during his time at Miami. He earned first-team All-ACC honors twice, and over his final seasons produced 141 total tackles, 12 passes defended, and 6 interceptions. Those aren't accidental numbers. Those are production numbers. Those are signs of someone consistently around the football. But what may be even more fascinating is what happened after arriving with the Rams. There's a perception out there that Cam Kinchens wasn't operating as a full-time contributor. But when you start looking closer, the picture changes dramatically. Information indicates he played over 900 snaps. That isn't a small role. That isn't a rotational appearance. That isn't someone occasionally entering games. That's major involvement. And once you break down where those snaps happened, suddenly you understand why this story is becoming impossible to ignore. Because Cam Kinchens wasn't simply lining up in one location and staying there. Far from it. He spent 656 snaps playing free safety. That was considered his primary role. But then things start expanding. He also played 236 snaps coming down into the box. Then another 54 snaps appeared in slot responsibilities. And even more surprising, there were situations where he lined up in roles classified similarly to edge responsibilities or defensive line alignments. Think about that for a moment. Free safety, box responsibilities, slot alignments, pass rushing situations. That's not a one-dimensional player. That's someone moving all over the field. That's someone coaches trust enough to place in multiple situations. That's someone asked to solve problems. And whenever a player starts becoming a solution for multiple positions, that usually tells you something very important. The coaching staff believes in him. Now another detail jumps out immediately. Cam Kinchens apparently doesn't just move around the field. He attacks. Reports surrounding his play describe a fierce tackler, someone who enjoys physicality, and someone whose development took a noticeable step forward. That growth starts becoming clear once the numbers are examined. During the season discussed in the material, Kinchens recorded 72 tackles and 24 stops against the run. And perhaps most impressive of all, previous production in run defense situations showed only 9 stops before that jump occurred. That increase more than doubled previous output. And if that alone wasn't enough, another layer begins appearing. Missed tackle percentages dropped. Solo tackle numbers increased. pass rush impact started entering the conversation. Suddenly, this wasn't simply a defensive back contributing in one phase of football. This was a player expanding his game in multiple directions simultaneously. Then comes one of the most unexpected developments: pressure on quarterbacks. According to the information available, Kinchins produced 6 pressures and generated impact despite limited opportunities rushing the passer. He even recorded a sack and multiple quarterback hits. For someone viewed primarily through a safety lens, those details stand out immediately, because now the discussion becomes much larger than simply asking whether Cam Kinchins can play safety. Now people begin asking, how many things can this player actually do? And that question may be exactly why this story is becoming more fascinating the deeper you go. Because when someone starts checking boxes everywhere, eventually fans begin wondering whether they've been watching one of the team's best-kept secrets all along. And here's the question, Rams fans. After seeing everything surrounding Cam Kinchins, the versatility, the growth, the physicality, and the increasing impact across multiple roles, do you believe he's still one of the most underappreciated players on this team? Or do you think people are finally starting to recognize what he brings? What makes this entire conversation even more intriguing is that the deeper you examine Cam Kinchins, the more a pattern starts emerging. This isn't a player simply surviving because of effort. This isn't someone hanging around because of potential alone. The numbers surrounding him begin revealing something that defensive players spend years trying to become: a playmaker around the football. And this is where the story takes another turn. Because there's one word attached to Kinchins that keeps showing up over and over again: ball hawk. Now every defense wants players who can create turnovers. Every team searches for guys capable of changing momentum with one snap. But according to the information surrounding Cam Kinchins, nearly 18.5% of passes thrown in his direction during his career have either been broken up or intercepted. Stop and think about that number for a second. That's not ordinary production. That immediately puts attention on a player, because those moments swing games. Of course, there's another side to that style of play. Aggressive players sometimes gamble. Sometimes they take chances trying to create something special. And yes, there are moments where taking risks can lead to giving up bigger plays. That was acknowledged as part of the conversation around him as well. But when a player keeps finding the football, eventually you start accepting some risk because the reward becomes impossible to ignore. And the numbers continue getting stronger. Across 34 career games discussed in the material, Cam Kinchins produced a combined total of 13 interceptions and pass breakups. Even more surprising, he already recorded multiple games with more than one interception. Then comes perhaps one of the wildest details attached to his early career: a 103-yard pick six. Not only did it establish a massive moment, but information surrounding the play indicates it tied or approached historic territory for the organization and established a rookie benchmark. And suddenly, the picture becomes much clearer. Versatility, physicality, growth, pass rush ability, run support, ball production. At some point, Rams fans have to ask a serious question. Has Cam Kinchins quietly been building one of the most complete defensive profiles on the roster while most people weren't paying attention? And there's one more detail that might make Rams fans appreciate his impact even more. Some players put up strong numbers against random opponents. Some players collect statistics that look impressive on paper, but don't necessarily come in meaningful moments. But according to the information available, Cam Kinchins has already started developing a very interesting trend against one particular opponent: Seattle. And those numbers are hard to ignore. Across 5 games discussed in the material, quarterbacks only targeted Kinchins 8 times. 8. That alone says a lot because offenses clearly started becoming cautious about throwing his way. But what happened next becomes even crazier. Out of those 8 targets, Kinchens came away with 4 interceptions. Half the passes thrown in his direction ended with him taking possession of the football. Think about that level of production. Half. That isn't luck. That isn't random. That's anticipation. That's instincts. That's preparation showing up when opportunities appear. And one of those interceptions turned into that unforgettable 103-yard return that instantly became one of the biggest highlights attached to his young career. So now the discussion becomes much bigger than asking whether Cam Kinchens deserves more attention. Maybe the real conversation is whether Rams fans are witnessing the rise of a defensive player capable of impacting games from every angle imaginable. Because when someone can tackle, rush, cover, force mistakes, move across multiple alignments, and create momentum-changing plays, eventually that secret weapon label starts becoming harder and harder to keep hidden.